Buying big can be an expensive option for amateur gardeners. Prices here range from £5 for a small shrub to £7,000 for the larger and more exotic trees. But buying partly or fully grown plants means you are spared years of waiting to see the final shape and size of your garden. This company, based west of London, sources its materials and serves customers, businesses and wealthy individuals from around the world. For over 14 years, Tendercare, based just west of London, has seen annual turnover grow to £2.25 million thanks to the growth in interest of gardening. Tendercare will shape shrubs into a variety of cones, pyramids or oval shapes to suit your taste. And there's a warranty on its products to prevent the nightmare of that expensive centrepiece of your new garden suddenly dying on you. It has been predicted that some 25% of the world's plant species could be condemned to extinction over the next 50 years. Hence the value of the Millennium Seed Bank at Ardingly in West Sussex. They not only store as many of the world's seed species as possible, but also carry out research into tree conservation, fauna and flora protection. This project calls together experts and representatives from 16 sub-Saharan African countries together for a week-long workshop. The aim is to cross-exchange information on seeds and trees, pinpoint key conservation actions, and organise sustainable management. 1% of forests are disappearing each year in sub-Saharan Africa, so much hope is pinned on this meeting of experts. The Millennium Seed Bank stores, some at special temperatures, more than 24,000 plant species. Samples from this bank will be made available to restore degraded lands, reintroduce species into the wild, and restock depleted populations. In Lake Kocha, or the lake in local Quechua language, life may be slow, but it's not easy. Deforestation and indiscriminate slash and burn policies to make charcoal from the lakeside trees have left deep scars on the landscape. And although the battle against poverty is constant, and people are tempted to exploit whatever is to hand, many campesinos know that if they don't look after the lake and the forests, their situation will worsen. So activist farmers joined the network of natural reserves for Colombian civil society. The network supports and encourages forest reserves on private land. These reserves form corridors to link and complement Colombia's existing system of national parks and conservation reserves. Some of the first reserves are on land owned by people who actually lived and worked in cities. The private reserve network is making a great difference, not just in protecting forests, but in changing the future of the campesinos. And it is the youngest residents who are leading the fray with fresh, innovative ideas. Children and young adults aged from 4 to 20 formed a group within the private reserves network. They called it Les Herederos del Planeta, or the Inheritors of the Planet. Their message is simple. They say, this is our planet, this is where we were born, where we live, and what we shall inherit. Each reserve is special. Owners have named their reserves with magnificent names like Cristal Enchantment or Andean Roots, which reflect their origin and culture. If they didn't have the reserves, the children may be lucky enough to find work as apprentices in construction work. The reserve group of children, the Herederos, have won worldwide distinctions at the Global 500 of the UN, and have been nominated Guardians of the Earth by the World Wildlife Fund. Many families have learned useful practical skills such as how to protect freshwater systems surrounding their farms and throughout the forests. They have also implemented ecotourism programs and environmental research and education. Adults and children routinely share their knowledge and experience. The Herederos don't work in isolation. With the help of WWF and other non-governmental organisations, there is a network which stretches across 120 different reserves. That means that 30,000 hectares are protected. It is a small but significant tally which needs the help of campesinos, city dwellers, farmers, biologists, naturalists, business people and professionals. Following the way with the teenage Heredera, the youngest members here are carrying out research on the forest. The Herederos have also developed technological solutions to improve daily life. Rodents are one of the most appetizing sources of food in the region. Before, it was just guinea pigs. One of the most important values of the Herederos is a willingness and acceptance to build a new culture. They are also eager to see their ideas spread. The reserves are spread through Colombia, although the majority are in the Andes, Amazon and Orinoco regions. Most are owned by families, individuals or non-government organisations. The nature of the network links many owners in many locations, and as each reserve is unique, it opens the way to the future, protecting life, the forest, the lake and the next generation. For over 77 years, the Miller family have worked at Great Park Farm in Berkshire. These days, their main business is beef cattle. But the farm also has 182 hectares for growing wheat, beans and grassland. Now it's part of a government scheme to encourage more British farmers to use greener techniques. Each farmer has been given a cash incentive to take part in a project based on the size of the land. They can choose up to 55 different things to do, like improving their hedges, ditches, and putting in margins between different fields. For farmers, it's a cost-effective way to become more environmentally friendly. The aim is to encourage the return of wild flowers and animals which have been driven out by the use of pesticides. That's something the government hopes will encourage farmers to take it up. If the pilot scheme is a success, it's to be rolled out across the UK, so all farmers and those visiting the country will be able to benefit from the use of greener farming techniques. Mozambique is one of the poorest countries in the world and has declared its first national park since independence from Portugal in 1975. As night falls, villagers prepare to sleep in their fields. But it's harvest time, and that means they risk being invaded by animals keen to steal the crops. Each year, elephants and other predators in the area eat up to 2/3 of everything that's been planted. People run out of food well before the next harvest, bringing periods of starvation. When dawn breaks, it's time to survey the night's damage, which often includes the destruction of sleeping huts as the animals search for their food. When fields are destroyed, farmers have nothing left but hope. Ironically, all this is happening within the boundaries of the Quidimbas National Park, where elephants, lions and antelope share their home with 50,000 humans. In these post-colonial times, it's no longer acceptable to remove people from their land and outside of parks, so animals and humans, community development and environmental protection live symbiotically. Locals not only support the park, but were also instrumental in its formation. The 7,500 square kilometres of park was established in Mozambique's northernmost Cabo Delgado province. It protects a rich array of coastal forests and mangroves, species coral reefs and seagrass beds. It also aims to help resolve conflicts between elephants, lions and people through zoning and resiting village and agricultural areas away from the main elephant routes. The numbers of fish are increasing these days. 2 pilot sanctuaries, nursery areas where fish are known to breed and where it is forbidden to cast nets, have been established. After initial skepticism, the local fishermen abide by rules and are sold on the no-take zones. The park boasts areas like Ibo Island, a former Portuguese slave trading post with grand old buildings and local artisans who make silver jewellery. Because local communities not only benefit from the park, but were instrumental in creating it, they have a huge incentive to protect it. Quirembas is a World Heritage Site. The biggest environmental issue of today is lack of access to clean, safe drinking water. More than 1 billion people across the world have no access to safe water, and 1 in 3 have no adequate sanitation. The health implications are desperate. More than 2 million people die every year from unsafe water. Most of them are children under the age of 5, and most of them from developing countries. The United Nations established a Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, and they adopted a general comment on the right to water. But it is not just in developing countries where people are cut off and left without water. Buying water in buckets from tankers and informal vendors can cost on average 12 times more per litre than water from a tap. Extending clean, piped water to deprived areas is the aim, but as always, meeting the cost is the dilemma for poorer governments and communities. In the wake of rising protests by citizens across the world demanding the right to clean water, the World Health Organization says the onus is on governments working together with citizens and other agencies to bring an end to the suffering of the 2 billion people around the world who are literally dying for water. Here at Timber Plus in Britain's West Midlands, they're creating a revolutionary new wood. It starts life as 70% sawdust and 30% polymer from industrial waste. They're mixed together and then the new poly wood is simply squeezed out or extruded through the die. The process is used in America, but not with such a high wood content. Using computer technology, the product can be individually shaped and even have plastic coatings put on to order. In addition, because the product uses only waste material that can be reused time and time again, it's totally environmentally friendly. The solid pieces are cut into strips, ready to be used in a variety of different applications. A target market for such products is the door industry. It's ideal for them because the polywood isn't affected by moisture, which makes normal wood rot, thus making a more robust product. Timber Plus have already spent over £300,000 in this process and are planning to invest much more. They hope their environmentally friendly polywood will become a major product both in the UK and around the world. people of Nusa Tenggara Timur province in the eastern part of Indonesia are working with environmental organisations to reverse years of destruction by replanting coral reefs and mangrove forests. After decades of mismanagement of the reef areas and illegal dynamite fishing, the local population says it's time to act. Perched in the north of Flores Island, the remote area of Riau is rich in natural beauty, but is one of the poorest provinces in Indonesia. There is no oil, gas, mining or industry here. The land is poor and little grows except rice and coconut trees. Many women sew traditional batiks, which take a month to complete each. The going price for those is $10 US. For survival, the population is dependent on the length of the coast, which measures 219,000 kilometers in length, an area which has been declared a marine park. Here, fishing vessels come ashore after a long night at sea. Sometimes the catch is plentiful, sometimes there's nothing. It's unpredictable. In the past, desperate fishermen would use a deadly mixture of kerosene and nitrate to bomb the reef and ensure a plentiful catch of fish. Now the fishermen have different ideas. The World Wildlife Fund has regular meetings with the fishermen, and together they discuss their long-term needs and how best to look after the area. It was common to use large fine mesh nets that damaged seagrass beds and caught juvenile fish. Now fishermen use fish platforms, line fishing and small nets. In the past, mangroves at the edge of the sea were also chopped down. Mangroves are essential to stop soil erosion and act as a home for fish. WWF, along with the community, has embarked on an ambitious replanting program. 10 and 12-year-olds replant mangroves with enthusiasm. A seed is taken from a mangrove tree and placed in a small pot with wet mud. It is left for 6 months and then replanted on the beach with a 90% success rate of taking root. Sustainable development is once again back on the spotlight. In Ruin, there is an awareness that any kind of development needs to involve all levels of society. It took decades to grow, but just a few minutes to cut down. Loggers are hard at work in the Thai rainforest on the Ivory Coast. They have government permits to work there, provided they don't operate in the Thai National Park itself. Timber is big business in West Africa, and it's one of Ivory Coast's most lucrative exports. The southwest of the country buzzes with sawmills. The majestic hardwood is trucked to the port of St. Pedro for export to Asia and Europe. Logging in the national parks is outlawed, and these days the whole industry in the Ivory Coast is tightly controlled. This rainforest is the largest remnant of a primary rainforest that once spanned 5 countries. Since the 1960s, it's been steadily destroyed, cut down for timber and farmland, leaving only a small, rich oasis for plants and animals like monkeys and chimpanzees. Professor Christopher Borsch has been studying chimpanzees in the rainforest for more than 2 decades. Their habitat is getting smaller and smaller, and he says that today there are only 1,500 left. There are many reasons for the decimation of the Thai forest, and according to Suleiman Ziba from the World Wildlife Fund, the biggest threat facing the area isn't the logging industry anymore. The consensus is that the expansion of agricultural land is the main cause of the disappearance of forests, especially when this deforestation is dictated by the market. Convincing villagers that saving the forest would be in their best interests is a real challenge. Gibby Kale runs a conservation project for the World Wildlife Fund. He says children are the forest's future, and has set up a program to educate youth about their environment, and spends much of his time showing children the riches to be found in the Tay forest. Cale is working hard to save Ivory Coast's last ecological treasure. He wants children to understand the beauty of trees by explaining how long they take to grow. A mammoth West African evergreen's roots can stretch along the surface about 10 meters in every direction. Its branches can soar 60 meters. Cale's dream is to change perceptions so that people can pull together to restore the environment's delicate balance by saving the forest. Most years, the Atacama region of northern Chile is a typical desert, hot and sandy, and known as one of the driest areas in the world. But every 3 or 4 years, when the El Niño weather phenomenon causes the ocean currents to shift and directs storms towards the Atacama, the desert flowers with brilliant blooms carpet the desert floor. The Atacama Desert on the western coast of South America is the driest in the world. There are sites here where there has been no rainfall in recorded history, and erosion occurs primarily from the wind. Such places look like the surface of Mars, and there is almost no trace of life. If rain occurs, only once at most every 10 years, it will fall uselessly on sterile soil. However, if the interval between rains is a decade or even a generation, the miracle of life often manages to hang on. Seeds and bulbs may lie dormant in the soil for lengthy periods, waiting for their chance to reproduce. When enough rain comes, they germinate, grow rapidly, and the desert turns into a garden. Flowers bloom, seeds form and spread. Then everything dies and awaits the next opportunity after 1, 5, or 30 years. For a few weeks though, the desert is an astonishing spectacle. Not just a few flowers, but thousands of individuals of each species tend to bloom simultaneously. Species often flower in sequence, so that sometimes a valley will be purple one day, yellow 2 weeks later, and blue after that. In places, a veritable carpet of colour covers soil which was lifeless just a few weeks before. The Desierto Florido is a remarkable phenomenon.